Beyond the Gates spoilers. Naomi Hawthorne had always believed that strength was something inherited quietly, passed down not through blood alone, but through the unspoken rules of survival within a powerful family. The revelations unfolding in Beyond the Gates force her to confront a truth far more brutal than any social scandal or political betrayal she had been raised to withstand. In recent weeks, Naomi's world has been reshaped by illness, fear, and the unbearable weight of genetic legacy. Her grandmother, Anita Dupree, once the emotional and moral anchor of the family, is now locked in a battle with breast cancer, a diagnosis that shattered the illusion of permanence the Dupree name had long provided. What initially appeared to be a singular tragedy soon revealed itself as something far more insidious when doctors confirmed that the disease haunting Anita was not random, but hereditary, capable of traveling silently through generations, rewriting futures before anyone could consent to the risk. The discovery triggered a chain reaction within the family, exposing vulnerabilities no amount of wealth or influence could shield them from. Naomi watched as her mother and aunt submitted to genetic testing, their confidence eroding beneath clinical terminology and sterile waiting rooms. When the results confirmed that Donnie Dupree carried the BRCA gene, the implications rippled outward with devastating clarity. Donnie's diagnosis was not merely a medical result. It was a mirror held up to the next generation, forcing Naomi and her sister Chelsea Hamilton to confront the possibility that the same silent threat lived inside their own bodies. What made the ordeal unbearable was not only the fear of disease, but the knowledge that this fear would never truly leave, even in moments meant for celebration or joy. Chelsea received her results first, and in that brief window of waiting, Naomi existed in a suspended state of dread. Every phone call, every pause, every polite smile felt rehearsed against a backdrop of impending truth. When the laboratory confirmed that Chelsea's results were clear, the family exhaled collectively, clinging to relief as if it were proof that the worst had already passed. The timing of Naomi's results, however, could not have been more cruel. On Friday, January 16th, surrounded by laughter and optimism at the country club, Naomi received the call that would permanently alter her understanding of herself. The setting was wrong in every possible way. The polished smiles, the clinking glasses, the carefully curated atmosphere of celebration all stood in violent contrast to the reality unfolding quietly within her. Naomi's face betrayed her long before her words did. There was a subtle shift in her expression, a momentary fracture in the composure she had mastered since childhood. It was the look of someone absorbing information too heavy to share, too dangerous to release into the open. Her result was not normal, not benign, not something that could be casually dismissed or postponed. And yet, Naomi chose silence. She chose to lie. Not out of denial, not out of selfishness, but out of a calculated, almost sacrificial instinct to protect those she loved. In that moment, she decided that the family did not need another source of fear, not when Anita was already fighting for her life. Not when Donnie was struggling under the emotional burden of guilt for something she never chose. Naomi's lie was gentle in its delivery, but monumental in its consequences. She smiled when she should have broken down. She offered reassurance when she herself was unraveling internally. The lie allowed the celebration to continue uninterrupted, preserving Chelsea's moment of joy and shielding the family from yet another descent into panic. But beneath that calm exterior, Naomi was already grieving the future she had imagined for herself, questioning whether motherhood, longevity, or even physical autonomy were still within her control. Her decision to conceal the truth transformed her from a passive participant in the family's crisis into its silent bearer, absorbing the fear so others would not have to. What makes Naomi's choice so dangerous is not the lie itself, but the isolation it creates. Genetic truth does not exist in a vacuum. It weaves itself into every aspect of life, especially marriage. Naomi's husband, bound to her by vows that promised honesty and partnership, remains unaware that the woman beside him is navigating a private war. Each unspoken fear, each withheld thought, widens the invisible distance between them. Naomi tells herself that she is protecting her marriage by delaying the truth, yet the foundation of that marriage is already under strain. Trust, once compromised, does not fracture loudly. It erodes quietly through omissions rather than confrontations. The moral complexity of Naomi's choice lies in its intention. She is not lying to escape responsibility or manipulate outcomes. She is lying because she believes love sometimes requires silence. Yet beyond the gates makes it painfully clear that silence has a cost. The question looming over Naomi's future is not whether the truth will come out, but when and at what emotional price. When the lie finally collapses, it will not simply reveal a medical condition. It will expose months of fear, loneliness, and decisions made without shared consent. Her husband may struggle to forgive not the diagnosis, but the exclusion, the realization that Naomi faced something life-altering alone while pretending everything was fine. Naomi Hawthorne's story is not about deceit for selfish gain. It is about the unbearable burden of choosing who deserves protection and who must be heard in order to preserve peace. Her lie about the BRCA gene stands as both an act of love and a potential act of destruction. In a family already fractured by illness and inherited trauma, Naomi's silence may prove to be the most dangerous legacy of all. Whether her marriage survives will depend not on the gene she carries, but on whether truth, when finally spoken, can heal what fear has already begun to break. Jacob Hawthorne was not a man who missed patterns easily. Long before the medical tests, before Anita's diagnosis sent shock waves through the Dupree family, before genetics became an uninvited presence in their daily conversations, Jacob had already sensed a shift in his wife. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone who did not share a life with Naomi, but to him it felt unmistakable. Naomi had begun to build walls, not dramatically, not with anger or accusation, but with distance disguised as composure. She was still kind, still attentive, still present in the physical sense, yet something essential had withdrawn. Conversations ended sooner than they used to. Silences stretched longer. Emotional intimacy, once effortless between them, now required careful navigation. Ironically, this withdrawal became more pronounced at a time when their marriage should have felt strongest. Jacob and Naomi had already taken the difficult but hopeful step of entering therapy together, acknowledging that love alone did not guarantee understanding. Their sessions were honest, constructive, and grounded in mutual respect. Communication had become their shared victory, something Jacob took pride in. He believed, perhaps naively, that the foundation they had built was strong enough to withstand any external pressure. That belief made Naomi's sudden emotional closure all the more devastating. It felt like regression, like watching someone quietly dismantle a bridge they had constructed together with such care. Jacob did not immediately suspect deception. Naomi's lie about her BRCA test results slipped past him on Friday not because he was inattentive, but because he trusted her. What troubled him was not the content of her words, but the way she delivered them. There was a guardedness in her tone, a restraint that did not match the relief she was supposed to be feeling. Still, he told himself that trauma manifests differently in everyone, especially when illness and family history collide. He wanted to give her space without abandoning her, support without pressure. Yet the more he tried to meet her where she was, the more Naomi retreated inward. Work became her refuge, her shield, her excuse. Whenever emotional tension surfaced, Naomi buried herself in professional obligations with an intensity that bordered on compulsion. Late nights, endless meetings, an unwavering focus that left little room for vulnerability. Jacob recognized the pattern instantly because he had seen it before. Work had always been Naomi's coping mechanism, but never to this extent, never with this level of urgency. It was no longer ambition, it was avoidance. To Jacob, it was a clear sign that something was deeply wrong, something Naomi was unwilling or unable to articulate. His response was gentle, deliberate. He encouraged her to lean back into therapy, reminding her that the space was safe, that she did not have to carry everything alone. Naomi's reaction, however, was abrupt and unexpected. She refused. Not hesitantly, not with uncertainty, but with finality. The refusal struck Jacob harder than any argument could have. Therapy had been their shared language of healing, and her rejection of it felt like a rejection of him. It created a fracture he could not ignore, a question he could not silence. What was Naomi so afraid to say that she would rather dismantle their progress than speak it aloud? Unbeknownst to Jacob, Naomi's fear was not abstract. It was cellular, hereditary, relentless. The knowledge that she carried the BRCA gene did not merely alter her perception of her health. It redefined her understanding of her future. Every decision now felt weighted with consequence. Love, marriage, motherhood all filtered through the lens of risk and responsibility. Naomi's distance from Jacob was not a reflection of diminished love, but of overwhelming guilt. She believed that closeness would inevitably lead to questions she could not answer honestly, to futures she could no longer promise without reservation. The prospect of having more children haunted her most. What once might have been a hopeful discussion, a shared dream, now represented a moral dilemma she felt unqualified to resolve. If Jacob were to suggest expanding their family, Naomi already knew how she would respond. She would refuse, firmly, without explanation. And that refusal would not be rooted in rejection or fear of commitment, but in order or of passing on a gene that could one day sentence her child to the same uncertainty. The same silent countdown she was now living with. Yet Jacob, unaware of the truth, would hear only rejection, only distance, only an unspoken no that carried no visible reason. This is where Naomi's lie becomes most dangerous. Not because it protects her family from immediate pain, but because it strips Jacob of context, forcing him to interpret her actions through a lens of confusion rather than compassion. Every closed door, every emotional withdrawal, every refusal becomes a mystery he cannot solve. Over time, mystery hardens into doubt. Doubt erodes trust, and trust, once compromised, cannot be repaired with half-truths or delayed confessions. The inevitable moment when Jacob learns the truth looms like an emotional reckoning. When he discovers that Naomi lead it only to her family, but to him betrayal will not lie in the diagnosis itself, but in the isolation she chose. Jacob will be forced to confront the reality that while he believed they were navigating life together, Naomi had been making life-altering decisions alone. He may question whether she trusted him enough to share her fear, whether their marriage was ever the safe space he believed it to be. And yet, beneath the anger and hurt, there will be another realization just as painful. Naomi lied because she loved him. She lied because she feared becoming a burden, feared altering the way he looked at her, feared that honesty would collapse the fragile normalcy she was trying to preserve. Her silence was an act of protection that ultimately became an act of exclusion. In choosing to shield Jacob from pain, she denied him the chance to stand beside her. What happens next will define their marriage. The truth, once revealed, will demand more than forgiveness. It will demand rebuilding trust in a space already weakened by silence. Naomi will have to learn that strength does not mean enduring alone. And Jacob will have to decide whether love can survive the knowledge that the person he trusted most chose to face her greatest fear without him. In Beyond the Gates, the question is no longer whether Naomi's lie will be exposed, but whether truth, when finally spoken, will arrive too late to save what fear has already placed in jeopardy.